Welcome back to Shine In and Out, the space where science meets soul. I'm your host, Sammy Stoltz, and here we explore the inner work that transforms our outer world. Today's guest is Cha Jones, an international author, speaker, and soul alignment coach, and she's traveled to more than 30 countries and lived in South Korea, Mexico, and Malaysia, to name a few. She's also raised her son as a single mother by choice. Her journey has been both a pilgrimage and a prophecy, going from corporate boardrooms to sacred healing spaces, and from survival mode to soul alignment. Cha is certified in emotional intelligence, life coaching, diversity, equity, and inclusion, with additional training in Reiki and spiritual surgery. She blends professional expertise with spiritual depth to guide women into their next chapter filled with peace, pleasure, and purpose. Here's some food for thought before we jump in. Research in cross-cultural psychology shows that immersing yourself in other cultures increases your cognitive flexibility, which is basically your brain's ability to see from new perspectives. It also strengthens your self-efficacy, which is the belief that you can handle whatever life throws at you. So powerful of a tool. Doesn't matter if you're anxious, as long as you trust yourself to get through it. Cha's global journey hasn't just shaped her worldview, it's rewired her brain and deepened her self-trust. So today we're going to explore what it means to realign with your soul and the science of emotional resilience, as well as how to live your life as this sacred assignment. This is going to be a soulful, honest, and wisdom-filled conversation. So let's dive on in. Okay, Cha, could you share a little bit with us about your upbringing and how it shaped the way you show up in the world today?
That's a great question to start off with. First, let me just say thank you for doing this interview with me and giving me this opportunity and platform.
My
But
pleasure.
my upbringing, I was born in Omaha, Nebraska. I always said, like, God, really? Why Omaha, Nebraska? Because it doesn't really fit me as a person. And I've always loved travel and I've always wanted to travel. And I had started traveling since I was like 6 months old. I took my first trip with my grandmother. But as I was developing as a child, I had a learning disability. And one of the things that I remember is that my mother, although we learned maybe around 3 or 4 years old that she had a mental illness, and that kind of shaped who I was. But in that, there were so many different lessons that I learned that shaped who I was and how I showed up and just me as a person. Her mental illness, it made me stronger and it brought out the leadership skills in me. And it also helped me to grow up faster than I really anticipated because I took on the nurturer and I was have keen understanding of what was going on at all times. But then as I was also growing up, I found out that I had a learning disability probably when I was in second grade. But the one thing that I loved and adored about my mother is even though she had a mental illness and people thought she should operate in a certain capacity, her capacity with me was always instilling in me that I was a leader, that I was this individual who could conquer anything and never to accept any roles that other people gave me. And so she would ask me, like, do you think you have a learning disability? And I'd be like, I know. And she was like, well, then you don't. Like, so operate as if you don't. And so that served me well and helped me to develop confidence. It also helped me learn to advocate and fight for myself and move beyond what other people's labels are and to self-identify and not allow anyone to identify for me. So with that being said, I would say that my upbringing was not traditional in any way, shape, or form. And I didn't necessarily come from the right side of the tracks, but I had all the tools that were given to me in adversity that allowed me to develop and become the woman that I am today.
Wow, beautifully said. I love the idea of self-identifying and not following labels because that does put you into a box that you don't have to be in. I know, especially in the realm of diagnoses, people get stuck and they assume it's never been done before. I can't be the one to do it. But if you don't put yourself in the box, you don't have to remain in the box. So that is such a powerful lesson, and I'm so glad you've lived by it. Do you think, have you ever done like inner child work over how you felt like you had to grow up faster than you did? Because I know many of us had that, and it's almost like having to go back and recognize that we didn't have a typical childhood, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I think I've done all the all the work that was possible for just sitting with myself. And, there was a point in my life where I was angry. I was angry that like I felt like I had been put in situations and that there was more for me to bear
Mm,
than I should have ever bared. And I think when you are trying to do the work or try to understand like where you're coming from and then what your journey is trying to unfold for you, there's a point where you have to question, like, who am I? Where am I going? What am I doing? Why? You get those why questions. And what I learned was I don't have to ask why
mm,
because the why is constantly unfolding anyways. But what I should ask is why not? Because you know, I have been given all the tools. I have been laid out a pathway. But especially when you are in victim mode, you think, okay, this is happening to me. But when I realize this is happening for me, that this is giving me all the tools I need for whatever it is that is on this journey that I can't see that's unfolding for me. And so, yeah, I've done the look back and be like, okay, that happened. Now I'm experiencing this. Had I not gone through that, I wouldn't be able to accept where I am currently now and do the work that is necessary for this moment. So, yes, I've gone back, I've looked at some of those things, and I've asked all the questions, and I've committed to doing the work. And I think that makes it easier when you're not in victim mode, when you're not blaming other people for your circumstances. I had to overcome some things. And if you don't ever overcome anything, you really don't have anything to offer this journey, anyways, because this is the lessons that you've gone through really help mold you into the person that you are becoming and that you will become. And so I've never looked at it other than, my late teens, early 20s when I was angry at what had been placed on my shoulders. But when you are a leader, had you not gone through anything, you can't instill those qualities in others. You can't present that for the world. And so you're not able to really show up as a full individual who has something to offer. I quit, at least I learned to start asking the questions, not like why me or woe me, but why not me? And how can I help somebody else with this? So I think that's how I took
heck yeah.
everything.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. Having a similar path, having to grow up too quickly and going through all of these things, the most powerful lens to look at it through is what is the lesson and how is it going to help me help others in the future? Because undoubtedly, like you said, the why is unfolding. There are so many things that, you hear people say, there is no reason for this. Like, there's no foreseeable reason why I have to go through this. And I'm like, just keep living because there's something down the line you're going to not be glad that it happened, but understand the why. So
Right.
that's awesome. And the victim mentality, I see so many people living in that. And it's, some people say you're the only one responsible for your life and the way that you're feeling. And it sounds harsh, but it is true in the sense that it's your choice to feel like a victim and your choice to not say, why not me? Why not do something beautiful with this? So that is so powerful. I love that. And I know you've worn many hats. You've been a corporate director, entrepreneur, global educator. What made you decide to follow your heart into the coaching and the healing work? How did that happen for you?
So I don't think I decided. I think like the other parts of my life, I was chosen for this. When I was about 3 or 4 years old, I had a experience with what I consider my higher, I guess, the universe, the higher calling, God, spirit. And it came to me and told me that I had this path and that I would do great work. And that kind of also helped me understand my upbringing, right? It helped me understand what I was dealing with as a child, that I needed to experience certain things so that I could do the work that I needed to do later in life. So that kind of helped me. But no, I think I chose these things. I think that they kind of revealed themselves to me and I accepted the calling.
Mm,
I've always loved to help people. Especially having to help my mother. I was the oldest child. So I had siblings that linked and depended on me. I've always been a leader. I've always been this person who saw multiple aspects and dynamics that were going on at the same time. And I could step outside of myself and be like, okay, I hear what you're saying, but I see what you're doing. And one is not adding up with one to make two. So let's kind of figure out what's going on here. So I think for me, I originally took the traditional route. You go to school, you
mhm.
get a good job, you do all these things. And I was fast tracking. Like I was like, I know I want that corner office in this high rise building. But then you hit that glass ceiling and I hit it like early, 20 something, like 23, 24, because I was trying to do multiple things, go to college, try to have this great job and do all these different things. And, I remember being like 24, I just bought my house and I had this corporate job and I just was like, other people are starting their career and I'm like, I'm finishing it. I don't want to do this anymore. Like I literally want to just like walk away and retire. But I was like 24.
That's how you know it's
and
not right for you.
so people would be like, you just started. And I was like, no, I don't want to do this. And I started my own business and was going into PR and just gonna follow my dream. And that was my first time just saying, okay, I'm gonna follow my dream. And I know that people are like, well, how you gonna pay your mortgage? How you gonna do this? And I was like, I have a plan. I'm gonna save up 6 months of my salary. I'm gonna do all these different things. And I thought that was it. And I did those things, right? I bought the house. 4 months later, quit my job, had my savings, follow up with passion and purpose. And then after about 6 years of doing that, I was like, I don't want to do this either. I want to do something different. I just kept following my intuition and I kept following my passion, kept making providing and giving a provision for what I needed to do. Always knew, like I remember when like coaching became really big, I felt like, oh, this is what I do naturally.
Right?
And I had been searching for that. Like, as an PR person, you want to kind of like mold people's careers and, help them figure out their lane and the wording and the messaging around that. But I had already been coaching individuals. I just didn't have a title for it. Then as coaching became more prevalent, I was like, oh, that's who I am naturally. Then I got my coaching certification and then I was, trying to do the work, but then it always wasn't the right time. And then I ended up taking a, position overseas. And so I just followed the journey, but think it kind of came to me and I allowed it to develop. And there's many times I was like, okay, I'm really going to take coaching seriously. Then something would happen. But I also needed to learn a little bit more so that I could then become the coach that I am today, where yes, I have a niche, but I don't have to be in that niche because I'm I'm a multi-dimensional
Oh,
person
yeah.
and I have all of these skills that I can bring to the table and I don't have to just stay focused in one lane. And so with that, because I was trying to put my in a box to say, this is who I am. and that's not. So I had to learn that as well. So that's kind of how it came to me, and I kind of just allowed it to mold over time, and it's worked.
Heck yeah. I actually also find that I work best in multiple lanes where I can go back and forth between all of the things that I care about, and it keeps me rejuvenated because I'm not burning myself out on just one thing. I love that you didn't let fear hold you back, because the biggest thing I see in people who stay in jobs that they don't like is the fear that they can't pay their mortgage, the fear that they can't, you know, find a new job to live off of. And so the fact that you followed your intuition with such trust is so beautiful to me. And I hope that more of us can get to that point where, you know, you just keep following your passion, like you said, and following the journey. It's so interesting because I think people, especially people my age, are very intent on figuring out exactly what they're supposed to be doing right now, ASAP. What's my purpose? What am I going to do for the rest of my life? And how do I get there right now? And that's a lot of pressure, but it's also kind of impossible, because even just in the last 4 years, how much I have evolved, I would never see myself doing a podcast ever in a million years, because I would never want to speak in front of people. And now I realize that I'm here to help, and it doesn't matter what I'm comfortable with. And like you said, I've always been coaching. Always. I've always been the person that people came to when they needed help with questions and stuff like that. So it just clicked, like you said, and it aligned with the soul. So, and you talk about there being 5 pillars of soul alignment. Could you walk us through what those look like?
Yeah, so I think when you are aligning with your soul, you have all of these questions of who am I? What am I supposed to do? And how am I supposed to do it? And for me, I always have looked at an individual and thought about, what does your soul want you to do? Yeah, forget about the school you went to, all your credentials, forget about the fact that you are, came from this particular family. You have done these things that you have, accomplished all of these things. But what does your soul want you to do? How do you want to show up? And so one of the things I believe that we have done as we came, I believe in reincarnation. I believe that your soul already knows what you were supposed to do, and that you had an assignment when you came into the world. So I think you first have to remember. So reconnect with your truth, because I feel like you had a blueprint before you came in the world. And oftentimes what happens is I feel like you come through this channel, and in that channel, what happens is everything that you know, or the assignment that you've been given, is kind of erased or put in the back of your mind, because now you have to become a baby and can't talk
Live in
and learn how to
society.
talk, and yeah, all the things. But your whole goal is to remember what that contract is, the contract that you have with the world, the contract that you have with yourself, the contract that you have with your family. You have all these different contracts. And then once you begin to remember that, it's about releasing. It's about clearing all the blocks and limitations, all the things, all the junk that you've come into the world and acquired. Now it's time to release those so that you can actually walk in your path and on your path. And then what you do is reimagine. Reimagine what that's going to look like for you. And you recreate those contracts, redesign your life on your terms so that you can show up and be all of who you need to be. And then you begin to align or realign. And this is about integrating what your truth is and how that looks for your daily life. How do you show up? How do you take the feeling of what you want, desire, and need and bring that to fruition? And then it's really about rising so that you can embody all of those things to align with the woman or man that you are desiring to be. And that's where a lot of people are like, well, how do I take that next step? How do I get to the next level? How do I show up unapologetically me, knowing that I have all the capabilities, and to honor my contract. And that can be difficult, but at the same time, it's so empowering. It's really great when you can actually stand in your truth and say, you know what? I'm going to honor why I came here, what I came to do. And I'm not going to think about the fact that I came from this family. I'm not going to think about the fact that I learned these things in this lane, and that these are the things that people have put on me, because I think a lot of times we don't show up and be our authentic selves because we feel like we're going to hurt other people, that we're not going to be able to perform the way we have been accustomed to performing. And in life, the freeing part is when you say, Q, I really appreciate being able to be on this journey. I appreciate all that you have instilled in me. But those were things that you desired. I now have to say, what do I desire? What do I need for this journey? And so I'm going to let those things go. I'm going to take a little piece of this, a little piece of that, and I'm going to walk forward. But that's not all of who I am. It might be a portion of me, but now it's time for me as an adult, or as a woman that's in her maturity stage. Now I'm willing to go ahead and take my contract back and fulfill it. And that means I have to let go of some things. And sometimes that's people, sometimes that's a place, sometimes that's, situationships that no longer serve you. And that's difficult for a lot of people because we've been ingrained to always show up respectfully for whatever has taught us. And those things that we have been taught don't always serve us. Because for me, and I'll try to kind of pivot this, but I have a son who just turned 6 last week. And even the moment he came into the world, I looked at it like he already knows who he is. I am just here to be the guide. I can't tell him you need to be this, 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 and this, because he already has a contract with himself. And that I am just here to facilitate how he shows up in that contract and give him the tools to, because to me, it's like being in the sand and you bury something and then you go and you start digging to try to reveal it, right? You try to find it, try to figure out how to take and pull back the sand, right? That's how I look at life. Like, so you come into this world and you've been buried, and the goal is to remove all of the debris so that you can then show up. And then when you show up, then you're like, okay, I'm going to take a little of this, take a little of that, and I'm going to walk forward. And so I try to make sure that even when he does things, I'm like, that's not what we do. Why is it not? That's not what I do. I can't determine what he's going to do. Can try to instill certain things in him. But what if that is not aligned with the contract? Then I'm just giving him a whole lot of garbage that he has to now have to peel back later. And so going back to like the work that I do, I just try to make sure that it all kind of helps a person look at, you already know who you are. You've accepted, and, sometimes some things have been dumped on you that you didn't ask for. But the goal for you is to figure out, how do I align with my highest and greatest self so that I can walk this plane of existence and show up fully as the person that I am and that I'm becoming. But you just need to know you have it. And oftentimes we try to deny what we feel inside because we feel guilty about what other people have given us. And so that's the work that I do. And I absolutely love it, because for a long time, I always used to ask myself, what's my purpose? It's not really about, because I think we have multiple purposes, but it's not until you decide you want to ask the questions that are greater than the questions that are before you that you really start to dig in deeper and get an understanding of what purpose means. And sometimes that's passionate and sometimes it's not. And I think we as a society have, so you need to be passionate. Sometimes this work is not passionate. I don't feel happy about certain things I have to, disclose about myself that doesn't feel really good. So so that's the work that
Yeah,
I do, and I absolutely love it.
that's so real. And it aligns with the self-concordance theory in psychology, which is when your goals and your authentic values are aligned, you can have better motivation, well-being, and you can actually persist through these goals. And it seems like each of your pillars helps bridge that gap between who you were told to be and who you truly are, which is sometimes a very big gap. And I'll get vulnerable right quick. I'm trying to navigate that gap because I know that I want to help people and I know that I could start right now. But part of me is thinking, oh, my family is so proud that I'm doing a master's with Johns Hopkins. Oh, my family wants me to be a doctor, and it's so funny because when I'm looking at other people and I'm coaching them, I say, this is your life. And if everyone else is gone one day, will you regret choosing this path on their behalf? And it's usually a yes. In my case, I think I'm just trying to figure out if there's a part of what I'm doing that I can use in my purpose in doing this and touching people, because by learning all of the science, I'm excited by it and I want to integrate it into the soulful work, which is something that isn't really seen. But I feel like there is a point where they connect and I'm just looking to touch that point and share it with people. So the idea is, can I do it teaching myself or do I need the credentials? Should I, at least even if I choose to do just this, do I tell my grandparents I'm still doing the masters or something? Like it's real. It is so real. And that's what I love about your approach. It's not just feel good wisdom. It's backed in how the human brain and the motivation systems actually work. So when you talk about remembering, how do you help people remember and reconnect with that truth and their contract, as you said?
So with my work, I do look at astrology to look at the whole person. I also look at numerology. So I look at a lot of esoteric type things, those sciences, to kind of look at the person. And you can tell a lot about a person through their astrological charts, looking at the houses, looking at the time of their birth, looking at what their soul contract is, because it will kind of reveal that. There are plenty of paths that a person can go down. It's not finite to that you have to do this, because you have free choice, right? You have the choice to be like, okay, I came into the world and I'm willing to accept that. Or, even for a lot of people who have victim mentalities, they have a choice to decide whether they're going to be the victim or that they're going to ascend and learn some lessons and decide, okay, I don't want to show up that way. And so you can avoid a lot of things that truly would help you on this path to be able to ascend to a greater level. And so with that, I try to, number one, interview them and ask them, like, who have you always wanted to be? If your parents or grandparents, if they had no voice in this and you were totally responsible for your life, what does that look like for you? If you can't disappoint anyone, if you can show up fully as yourself, what's that look like? And people start to really think about, well, if I could have done anything in the world, I would have been a dancer. Okay, so why didn't you show up as the dancer? And oftentimes it's because I was going to disappoint somebody, or because I didn't have the confidence that I could do it. But, for many different reasons, people
Big
don't
one
show
is,
up
yeah, the
authentically.
fear of not being able to sustain oneself because everybody says art, you can't live off of making art and
Yeah.
things like that, but you absolutely can.
Or, you don't want to be a starving artist,
Yep,
No,
exactly.
nobody wants to be a starving artist. But if I create every day and I do the work that I absolutely love, then what happens is, I love this quote, when the student's ready, the teacher appears. And so when you accept, this is who I am and this is what I'm going to do, those pathways open. You meet the right person. They say, I'm going to invest in you.
Mm-hmm.
Then, have you thought about doing this art show? No.
100%.
Okay. And then the things happen and, you start having synchronicity, but because society says you got to go to school, you got to go get a good job, you have to buy a house, you have to do all these things that will say you're successful. But who determines what success is? And I think for a lot of people, they have bought into what people have said that success is, when in fact they don't feel successful doing it. They don't feel like they're showing up doing it. They don't feel alive doing it. So they're doing things out of obligation. And whenever you do anything out of obligation versus reverence for that thing, then you feel like it is a task. And there's nothing purposeful about a task that you don't even want to do.
Yeah.
So I think that becomes the issue. But until people start asking themselves questions about why they aren't showing up in a way, or they feel like they've taken on way too much, they have all this burnout, it's
Mm.
because you're working against your natural self.
Yeah.
Naturally, you're an artist. Naturally, you're a dancer. Naturally, like all these things that you have always loved to do. For instance, I said I had a learning disability, right? And the thing is, I've always been a writer. I've always loved to write. I've always been able to put words together. My learning disability says she can't do that. She's dyslexic. She can't, she's going to fumble that ball, but that's who I am, right? And if I took, okay,
Mm.
society says I have this label that I need to accept for myself, then it goes against
Yeah.
everything that my spirit is saying that I naturally am able to do. And once I learned that, yes, it was challenging at one point to do this, but even doing this makes me happy.
Yeah.
And figuring out ways to form words outside of the box. And I don't have to conform to, this is the sentence structure for you. This is the sentence structure for my creativity. And I'm drawing pictures with words.
Yeah.
Now I can step outside of that and say, I don't have to follow society's rules and regulations because it does not comply with my creativity. And I think until you're willing to do that, then a lot of times you get put in boxes that you can't get out of. You feel stuck. You feel tired. You feel overwhelmed. All these different adjectives to describe what you're going through. But really, that you're not showing up. It's not that you're not answering the call. And therefore, you get stuck in a place that doesn't serve you anymore because you're not willing to do the work.
Percent. And I fully believe that defining your own version of success is so important that it's the first page of my ebook on my website. Define your definition of success. And it's really so precise to you. And if you don't take the time to think it out amidst your values and your soul contract, you're never going to know what you're missing. You're never going to know how to get there because you don't know what you're going toward. So taking that time is very important, and having a teacher and a coach is always so helpful. And your release pillar, you talk about, I'm sure it's a release of the society and all of those things, but also inherited trauma. And I love the study of epigenetics, which shows that trauma can leave chemical marks on our DNA that influences how our genes are expressed. And the good news is that supportive environments and intentional healing can shift these patterns psychologically and physiologically. So I'm curious, how do you help your students or your clients recognize and break those patterns?
A lot of different things, modalities that I try to incorporate, but a lot of it is through meditation and just doing a lot of rewriting. Like, what is it that you brought to the table that came from your mother or came from your father or came from this experience that you had as a child? And do you want to accept that? Do you want to keep living that? How has that served you, right? Because you can continue to do the same thing and expect a different result. We know that's the definition of insanity. Or you can say, that's not working for me. Pull back the layers. It requires you to do work. It requires you to sit with yourself. It requires you to ask very difficult questions, but you're going to rewrite your subconscious and conscious contracts that we have with ourselves, right? And look at what has served you and integrate more of that. And then what hasn't served you and take that away. And all of that is about mindset and really trying to figure out, is this the mindset that serves my best and highest calling? Or is this the mindset I need to rewrite and figure out what works for me? And so I go through several steps of helping them change their mindset. And that's over time because, especially when you're dealing with muscles that you haven't used and or you haven't used in a while, you have to revamp and get some momentum in that area. And it's also difficult because it's work that is going soul level to say, I've been doing this, not in the wrong way, but I've been doing this according to other people's rules. And now I need to rewrite those rules. And I need to dig deeper. And a lot of times people don't, because it's uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah.
I know that when I was rewriting, it's like, I want to see myself naked. Like, I don't want to see, I don't want to reveal this, that I've been dealing with all of this or that I've taken on all of these things that
Because it
don't
makes
serve
it
me.
real.
Yes. And so I think that's how I try to approach that aspect. And everybody's different because everybody comes into it differently at a different stage. Some people are very self-aware, self-actualized, and they're like, I'm ready. I know what some of my issues are. I know what some things I need to let go of. And some people are like, listen,
Something's wrong.
I've been avoiding this all my life for a reason. So it just depends on where that person is and the things I have them do to figure out, this is not serving you anymore. Let's rewrite this part of the journey.
Something that I'm so excited to hear from you about is how much your travel has impacted you. Because, I mean, even just in myself, in the travels that I have taken, it proves that cross-cultural psychology, that living abroad or going abroad fosters that cognitive flexibility, and your brain can see more perspectives and adapt to new contexts. But it also strengthens your self-efficacy, which is the belief that you can navigate whatever life throws at you, any challenges. And it gives you that stronger sense of self and that self-trust. So even in my brief travels, I have experienced that realization that I can do it, even if it's scary, or I always make it through. So I'm so curious, living abroad, being abroad 30 plus countries, what are your biggest lessons from the travel that you've done?
That's a big one. I think travel really, they say if you're in a relationship and you want to know if this relationship is going to work, that you should travel together. I think that's when you really learn a person, because it's easy for people to operate in an environment that they're accustomed to, but when you throw different things at a person, maybe a language barrier, different foods, communication styles, cultural experiences, when you start throwing all of that in and you see how people navigate, then you're like, okay, I can't take you with me.
Yeah.
Or, you're not ready for this. And you get to see how people really navigate in their mind through difficult situations and or just different experiences, because it happens so quickly. Like it could be a 3-4 day trip and you will see a whole different person that will show up, because in your own environment, you're on autopilot and you're just doing things. And it's just what comes naturally to you because you've done it so many times. But when you have to be outside of your own environment and you step outside that box and the things that, that's not placed right there. They don't do everything that you are accustomed to doing. And you can't define that as wrong, because it's different. It doesn't mean it's wrong. That's how they do it. Just like I can't come to your house and say, I don't like how you have this feng shui set up. This is how you decorate. It may not be how I want. Like, for instance, toilet paper. I don't like when the toilet paper comes from the bottom.
Oh, yeah.
I like it coming up.
Listen, Cha, the patent has the toilet paper coming from the top. I don't know if you've ever seen the original patent, but it's totally valid. It belongs on top.
It makes sense, right? But it would be wrong for me to go in your bathroom and flip it, right? So same thing when you go to someone else's house in a different country or you go to a different country. There are things that they do that are customary to them and that lifestyle and that culture. And so it's improper for you to go there and say, that's wrong. This is how it should be done. And how egotistic is that? So I think for me, travel has given me an opportunity to see myself because in placing myself in situations and countries in different cultures, you get to see how similar you are, but you also get to see how different you are. And then you get to see how can I integrate me here and be cohesive. I'm not here to change the landscape. I'm not here to predict how people should act or what they do is it appropriate or inappropriate. I'm here to learn something. And I've learned a lot about myself being outside cuz you can see yourself a lot clearer when you're outside your own environment. So I've learned a lot about myself that I would not have known otherwise. Sorry, I have a lot going on this computer, obviously connected. Sorry, but I've learned a lot about who I am, and I've learned a lot about what I dislike about myself, the things I want to change, the things I want to integrate and take from somebody else's culture. And then when you're traveling, you have to have good time management in a lot of aspects. You have to think outside the box. You have to be willing to accept what is and what isn't. You have to be able to think in the moment. So there's so many things that you're learning that you don't necessarily have to do at home that requires you to take an evaluation of yourself constantly versus if you're at home, you may evaluate that every now and again, right? Because it's not changing so much. So I think travel really opens you up to who you are. It helps you to get outside your head. But more importantly, I've learned to live. I've learned to take the good with the bad and the ugly. I've learned to be creative because sometimes you're in the midst of something, you're like, I don't really know what the appropriate way is to handle this, but I'm gonna make it do what it does, right? And then you get to see how more alike you are with other people that because the world would make you think that we are all so different that you cannot possibly be like some Chinese person. You could not possibly be like some Russian person. You could not, you're so vastly, you're human.
Exactly.
And when you really accept that there's a human experience, and the one thing, and I'll share this, I was living in Korea and it was New Year's Eve and I was going on a trip. I lived in Seosan, which is about 2 hours south of Seoul. And I got on a bus. The bus was packed. Now I bought a ticket, but they oversold the seats. So now I got to stand. And I had gone party ready. I had stiletto heels on. I was like, I got to stand for 2 hours. Now it's also New Year's Eve. So that 2 hours was going to be prolonged because there was so much traffic. And so I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I signed up for this. Why did I not leave earlier? Right. And so I'm standing there and I feel this tug on my coat. And I'm like, and it's this lady and she's telling me to sit down and it's already two people in the seat. And I was like, oh, no, thank you. No, thank you. And she's like, sit. And so I was like, okay. So I sit like on the corner and then she has the girl that sit next to her move to the outside and she scooted over and then she made room. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, how would I have handled that in America? Like, would somebody have given me the seat? Would she have made room for me? Right. So there's a lot of things that was going on in my head. So I was just so like in awe. So when we get to Seoul, get off the bus, and I'm trying to say thank you, and I was handing her some money, like, let me pay for your bus ticket at least, like, and I didn't have the words because I didn't speak Hangul. So I was trying to figure out how I could communicate. So I was giving her the money and she was saying no. And I remember her taking my hand with the money in it and she put it on my heart and then she put it on her heart. And then so to say, from my heart to your heart, don't worry about this. I gave you the seat because I'm a compassionate human being and I saw that you were standing there and I didn't want you to stand there. And I really wanted you to be comfortable. And I had tears running down my eyes because in my head, I told myself this story, right? I told myself, this is what she's saying to me. She's telling me, from my heart to your heart, you don't have to worry because I see me in you. And for so many different reasons, it brought tears to my eyes to know, number one, that somebody was looking out for me. Number two, that there are still good people in the world. And it didn't matter that I paid for this ticket to have this particular seat and they oversold it. I want you to be just as comfortable as I am. And I see you in me. And so that experience just like I had so many things going through my head because it was New Year's Eve. I was trying to get somewhere. I took a later bus for a particular reason and, got fully dressed versus bringing my bag and getting dressed where I was going. All these different things trying to make it all work out when none of that was the, reason for the season. None of that was how I was going to bring forward a new year. None of that mattered. But it all came down to compassion and love and being able to support another human being. And so I always remember that because that, like they say, people don't remember what you may say to them, but they do remember how you treat them. And I will forever remember that this woman, older Ajima in Korea, made room for me. And that's what I take with me, especially on traveling trips where I have to remember I may be that older woman that says, hey, I see you. I'm making room for you. Or someone may do that again for me. But having those experiences makes traveling like the best. There are messy moments, but I try to always hold those moments for myself.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, realizing the shared human experience, the fundamental experience that we all share, the emotions of everything we experience, and the desire to be seen and heard and loved and understood is so universal that once you realize that, it's hard not to have compassion for the people around you. And it was so beautiful, your story, because the communication didn't need language. I struggled when I went to Italy because I was meeting my family that I had never met, and I just wanted to tell them everything and hear all about them. And it was, Google Translate was amazing for that purpose. But in the meantime, there were such small things that we communicated with just love. Like my aunt opened the door, grabbed my face, and started crying the first time she met me, and then I was crying, and it was just so beautiful. And you don't need to speak the same language to have the same beautiful experience together. And what you said about learning more about yourself, about realizing the things you disliked about yourself, I think instead of framing it that way, it's more of realizing that those things that you learned to do or express are not aligned with your soul. And once you see that, you can't let it go. You have to change. So huge revelations in all of my travel. And I often get the bug, like, I need to do something like that again because I need to renew that sense of awe, just of how little of the world I've seen and how little I know. Anytime I look at a mountain, I'm so humbled. I'm like, wow, how small I am, And I love that feeling. So as we're getting up in time, if you could leave our listeners with one truth about their liberation or their living in alignment, what would you want our listeners to know?
Leave them with the fact that, this is the life that you are living is a journey. And so often we get the notion that we should be reaching for the destination. And I like to remind people that the destination is death at the end of the day. Like, it's kind of morbid. And so enjoy the journey. The journey will unfold. It will have you stretch. It's difficult sometimes. There are tears involved sometimes. There's things that you don't want to do. You don't want to show up in a certain capacity. But to be honest, that is part of the process. And I say this to a lot of people. When you remove one thing, you remove everything. So you rewrite the entire process when you take out one pivotal point of any part of what you're experiencing, when you shift that, you shift everything. And so you have the ability to either conform to situations or recreate situations at any given time. And it serves you well to always experience something new about who you are, where you are, what you want. And always ask yourself, like, who am I becoming? And what do I want to receive in that process? And things unfold. But if you're so fixated on the destination, because I know I was at one point, I was like, I got to get there. I got to get there. Where is there? Where is there?
Yeah.
Like, when you get there, are you going to be content with there? Because oftentimes when you meet a goal, once you finish, it's like, now what? You're looking around like, okay, I did that. Now what? And so now you have to start over a new process. Once you accomplish something, and that's not the end, that might be the end of that experience, but it's not the end. And when you really get to the end, that's completion, right?
Yeah.
And so I like to look at it like a video game that you're navigating. There are going to be times where you take the wrong turn. That's your stinking thinking, because there's no wrong turns.
Exactly.
But there's going to be times where you go down a path and it's not what you expected. But if you rewrite that resolution at that moment, it's what you need. And it's not necessarily always what you expect or anticipate, but you have the ability to always create the life and the lane that you desire to be in. And sometimes that's asking difficult questions. Sometimes that's realizing that you are not the person that you used to be, and that doesn't serve where you're going, and asking more questions about your experience that will lead you to a different scenario. It's all about the unveiling process. And that if you stay in that and you realize that this is all a learning experience, and you take the good with the bad with the good, and you just keep on learning, then you'll always be where you're supposed to be. And you are never too late. You will never be too early. You will always arrive on time, and you are exactly where you're supposed to be at any given time. And that takes away from trying to arrive at some particular destination that's probably not even what you desire to be or do. And it takes me back to the definition of sin. We've been told that sin is the things that we are not supposed to do. We've been told that sinning is the bad, right? It is the imperfection that has been exposed. You are a sinner. We're not. Sinning means to miss the mark. It's an archery term. And anytime you aim at something and you do not hit that mark, you are a sinner. But if you take that in perspective to what is your mark? What's the mark that you want to leave on life? You can't miss it, because as long as you're aiming, as long as you keep showing up, you are right where you're supposed to be. And I think when we redefine the definition of what it means to miss the mark, that we can realign that at any given time. And that's what your soul wants to do. Your soul wants to keep recalibrating so that you actually hit the mark. And that means that you are aligned. That means that you are on purpose. That means that you are showing up, becoming the best version of yourself. So if I could leave anything, I'd leave that you are perfect, even in your imperfections, and that you don't have to change anything, but you shall. It behooves you to always realign until you not get it right, because I don't think there's a wrong, but I think until you are satisfied with what you are doing, how you're doing it, and why you're doing it. And that will continuously change until you actually reach the destination, which we know what that is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, always getting closer to our soul and the lessons we're supposed to learn. And I love the archery metaphor because, well, it's not just a metaphor, but you can miss a lot And that's okay because that's the whole point of practice. But eventually, when it matters most and you're in the competition, because you've practiced, you do hit the bullseye, and that's your purpose. But if you are so fearful and avoidant of practicing because you're afraid of sinning or messing up along the way, you're not going to have the skills you need to make the bullseye and fulfill your purpose. I do try to see the bigger scope of things. And you don't need to travel to learn all of these lessons. You can just be more aware in your daily life that it's like it's a game. Like you said, if you don't take yourself and your life so seriously, those little moments where you mess up, instead of ruminating, oh my gosh, I said the wrong thing in front of this important person, or, anything along those lines, it's stepping back at the mountain of life and seeing how small that one event was and how little it will impact you when you're looking back on your deathbed, you know? And I always say death is one of our greatest teachers because it has a finality that makes us want to use our time wisely while we have it. So,
Yes.
and it sounds like you're doing just that and you're helping so many people do that. So thank you for everything that you do and for helping us all get closer to our alignment, our soul.
Absolutely. Thank you, Samantha, for having me, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to share a little bit more about who I am with your viewers. And thank you for just giving me the opportunity. I appreciate it so much.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Looking forward to hearing more about what you do in the world. Cha, thank you so much for sharing your journey and your wisdom here with us today. Your story is such a beautiful reminder that alignment isn't a one-time event. It's a lifelong relationship with our truth. If you want to connect with Cha and explore her coaching, retreats, or resources, you can find all of her information in the show notes. And if this conversation inspired you, please share it with a friend and feel free to subscribe if this type of content resonates with you. The more feedback we get, the closer we can get to helping more people. The more feedback we get, the more people we can help. Remember, your life is a sacred assignment, and you are the author of your own liberation. So until next time, keep shining.